Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for coming out to participate in our summer 2023 FCI live series. We're getting down to the end of the last week. It's our second week, but we've got a great case study for you today. We know that you guys are always requesting more peer case studies, learning directly from your peers' experience. And we invited Samone Bullock, a board member from the Fertile Ground Food Co-op, to come talk to us about building board systems at work, getting on to a board application that has really changed the way that they are able to accomplish things at their co-op. So we're going to be diving into that in just a minute. First, the quick bit of housekeeping, please do mute. Please check right now that you are muted, and please stay muted unless a specific speaker asks you to unmute. We will ask you to use the chat for questions or the hand raise signal. I'll keep an eye out for that if you know how to use that in Zoom. If not, please do stay muted and just put it in the chat, your question, but we welcome questions. This is going to be kind of a conversational one. If you were at this morning's, very similar question and answer, kind of interview style, and your questions are welcome throughout the presentation. But the session is being recorded, so please stay muted. All videos from all FCI live sessions will be sent out to you. You'll get a link. They will be loaded on our Food Co-op Initiative YouTube page on the afternoon of Monday, July 3rd, this coming Monday, and we will send you the link so you know where to access those. If you are here, you're going to get that link. So yes, you will get the recording from this today. And I got a few more people let in here. There we go. All right. So we want to real quickly just thank our champion sponsors for the series of this summer's 2023 FCI Live series, which is National Cooperative Grocers. Thanks so much to them for making this series possible. And okay, back to the topic at hand. So this is a case study with Fertile Ground Food Co-op from Raleigh, North Carolina, about their board systems and creating something that was effective for them, something that works for them. And we're going to go in depth with Samone Bullock, who is a board member from Fertile Ground Food Co-op. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and say, welcome, Samone. Oh.
Hey, hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, as you mentioned, I'm Samone Bullock Dillahunt. I'm a board member with Fertile Ground Food Cooperative, have been so for the last 3 years. We are based out of Southeast Raleigh, North Carolina. Southeast Raleigh is a historically and predominantly Black community, and we have a little over 850 member owners and are rapidly progressing towards our goal of 1,500 member owners before groundbreaking, which we are hoping is going to be in the spring of 2024, fingers crossed. And so much like other cooperatives, Fertile Ground is really here to meet a need in our community. And so we're really working hard to create a space that does more than just provide access to fresh and affordable foods, but really moves our community towards this concept of a solidarity economy, right? And so to us, that means, what does it look like for us to truly value people over profit, and to be in community and cooperation with each other in a way that helps us value each other, but also think of food beyond something we just eat, but really the system that nourishes us both inside and out. And so we're excited to create, much like other food cooperatives, as I'll say probably a lot, but more than just a grocery store, but a community space that brings together people and really prioritizes our community, our farmers, our local entrepreneurs, and creates just a healthy space for people to thrive.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for introducing us to your co-op. And for those who don't know, they just announced their site, within the last month,
Yes.
month or so?
Yep. In April, we announced our site location, which I'm not sure if anybody here is in North Carolina, but we'll be off of Garner Road in Raleigh, adjacent to the J.D. Lewis Center and Garner Road Community Center. And for those wanting kind of more information about where we are in our site progress, you can visit us at fertileground.coop/updates, and that's where we're keeping everything. So
excellent. Okay. Well, and can I ask you real quick to introduce yourself a little more, Samone, how long you've been on the board, but also just you brought a lot of professional background to this that is going to play into why you decided to take on this challenge at your co-op. Could you just share a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so in my day job, as I'm sure other folks know, Fertile Grounds Board is very much a working board. And so the expertise I bring to the board is marketing and outreach expertise. So I serve as Director of Marketing and Community Relations for Advanced Community Health, which is a federally qualified health center in Southeast Raleigh. And so that's like my primary work. And so I try to bring a lot of that knowledge with us to the cooperative, but also just generally passionate about organization and systems and how to make things more efficient. Maybe it's me being a Virgo, I don't know, but I'm just very passionate about those types of things and making sure we're efficient. So kind of in that governance space, I would say, is also something I'm passionate about and bring to the board as well.
Yeah, and when I first met you, I didn't expect that. It has been very rare that I've met someone with marketing expertise who is like the go-to organizing person and wants everything in alignment. So that was a surprise to me. And how long have you been on the board?
Yeah, so 3 years. So since March of 2020, it's 2023. Yes, so 2020.
Okay. All right. So you guys have been organizing 7 years at this point?
So it's been a decade for us, really. So we were
Decade.
formerly, yeah, over a decade, or close to a decade. So some conversations starting in 2013 with us officially being incorporated in 2015. So we've been on the run for a little while.
Well, it's becoming pretty much the average of most of the co-ops that are opening in the next year or
Right.
so. So I wanted to ask you, so of course I wanted to point that out because like, okay, Fertile Ground's been organizing for 10 years. So about 7 years into it, Samone joins the board. And when I met you, one of the first things you were working on a project, kind of organizing the project. And one of the first things you said to me is, I need to get this board onto a platform. I need to get this board utilizing some kind of shared way of communicating. What was the state of that board communication when you arrived? I assume it's like a lot of startup food co-ops that was a little bit of email, a little bit of texting, a little bit of everything, but how was communication working and what did you see that really impassioned you to find a system?
Yeah, no, that's spot on. I think, and it's not anybody's fault or anything, right? But I think in initial phases, a lot of not even just cooperatives, but organizations in general struggle to find a communication channel that works for everybody. You have people who prefer text messages, people who are like, don't text me, just email me, people who want to be called. And that can create just a challenge when it comes to getting out important communications. And so before we implemented Boardable, which we'll talk about later on, we discussed this very heavily in our board retreat and came to the consensus that we really need to find a system that we are all in agreement on will be our primary communication system. So while we may send some text here and there or do X, Y, and Z, we know that this particular channel is our go-to channel. So if something comes out of this, everybody needs to read it. This is important. We need to do that. And I think it just spurred out of, wanting to better communicate, but also just better serve our member owners and just be better board members, right? With us being working board, we have to make sure that we're on point and really being efficient with our time. And so that requires a lot of really, good communication. And in order to do that, we have to be on the same page about what that channel will be. And so, we really moved and agreed that we need to find something.
So it's good to hear. Okay, so you guys came to a moment of agreement, like we've got to pick a system. So it was really a team-wide decision.
Correct.
Because quite often we hear from boards, we need a system, but I hear it from like one board member, two, and then and they're really in that still like, 2 people will only do email, 2 people only do phone calls. You've got 3 people that prefer to, and there is no agreement about this. And the further you go along in organizing, the more it's deteriorating your ability to really get things done. But you guys as a team had become aware of that.
Correct. Yeah, I think we all were in agreement that what we were doing just wasn't working to the best of its ability. And we needed to find just a better way to all stay in touch with each other so we can make sure the work was getting done. And so I was very appreciative of the board and our willingness to take that step in that process.
Okay, so you guys make this agreement. The board's like, yeah, let's do this. You get charged, I assume, with going out and finding the system, like finding the way. What all did you consider? Did you consider multiple platforms? How did you think this through?
Yeah, we considered quite a few different platforms, and I think some of the things that I was thinking about is one, user friendliness. We're a multi-generational board, and so I needed to make sure that we could find something that appealed to those of us who are a little more tech savvy, but as well as those who are like, I could do without technology for like the rest of my life. So we needed to find something that kind of met people in the middle, but also that prioritized security. That was a real big reason to push us to a board management software and platform as well.
Hmm.
We realized kind of early on we were using our like personal email addresses, and we agreed that we got to find a different way. And so we did go through a process of adopting like domain email addresses via Google Workspace that was incorporated into this process as well. But security was a big thing because as we, get into the process of thinking through lease agreements and different things like confidential things, we wanted to make sure that we had proper security and technological security as it relates to our communications. And so user friendliness, security, but also just features that we needed. So integrations with Google Drive, which is where we keep a lot of our things organized, integration with people's calendars, the ability to send some things or have some interactions with mobile. And so having some sort of app was really important. Those are the main things that comes to mind.
Okay, great. And I'm gonna highlight, and then someone's question is as well. We'll get to that question in a second. I'm gonna highlight. It's not something I usually hear from boards, and so we're looking for a system, and they were saying, and the word security. And I love that you guys were really thinking about that and taking that seriously. A lot of startups don't. They're like, oh, there's not a lot of competition here, or people won't, or and you guys took that really seriously. And I was just really I want to call that out because we don't hear that with a lot of startups, and I think it's really important. I love that. Sheila asks, do you find that your platform that you're using now is more secure than Google Drive?
So I won't say whether it's more or less. I think I would say it's probably equally secure depending on how you set up the Google Drive. But this really allowed us to kind of have a additional space to store things that only the board would have access to. Because things can kind of get a little wonky sometimes with Google Drive with the sharing settings. And if you're not really, keeping on top of that, some folders could be shared with whomever, and somebody just really has to keep track of that. And so this allowed us to really say like, documents we only want for the board will be housed in here, but we also they've rolled out a lot of new features that just directly integrates and streamlines with Google Drive. So we're able to keep things there, but it's still secure and we can manage access. So I think
Excellent.
hopefully I find the answer.
I think so. I think so. I saw the person who asked the question nodding. So
yeah.
So you said like the main criteria you were looking at was user friendly for multi-generational, which I think is often an issue. Is usually that person who's like, I'm only going to check email once a week. That can really make it tough to kind of get all on the same page for everyone. So I loved that. Security and then integration with Google Drive, but also with personal calendars. I mean, just high functionality with the systems that you're already using. So
Right.
what can you name some of the apps or tools that you did look at?
Yeah, so of course we looked at Boardable. There's a platform, I believe it's called Onboard, that we did do a trial of as well. And let me make sure that is the correct. Yes, it's called Onboard. We looked at a third one, and of course it's going to slip my mind right now. But those were the major two that we looked at when we came to those things. And let me make sure I'm going to just find it really quickly again. Yeah, those were the main two. Yeah, Onboard, Diligent was the other that I did look at as well. So Boardable, Diligent, and Onboard were the few that we looked at.
So these are all board specific softwares. So is there
Yes.
kind of a project management aspect? Is it kind of like Slack? No?
Yeah, and I was like, I really wanted to differentiate between those. So Boardable is definitely not a project management software. Some might argue that you could potentially utilize it in a project management way, specifically as it relates to task management, because it does have those features. But for organizations really wanting to have like a more detailed project management software, Boardable will not be that. It's really to keep the board organized. And I would say the platform is more centered around meeting organization, which is the thing that I forgot to mention as far as what we were looking for as well. We wanted something that would really help us be more efficient with our board meetings, help us get our board packets together, and just more easily share information and documents as it relates to upcoming board meetings or meetings in general. And so Boardable ended up being, just our top choice for those specific needs. They have a lot of great features as it relates to creating your agenda. You can assign times on your agenda within the app. You can assign documents and tag them and put them right in your agenda and create your board packet all within the app. And so this has really helped our secretary to be able to get those board packets out. We get those out a week in advance now, which was not something that we were doing, let alone having board packets. And so this has just made that process like a lot easier and more streamlined, and help us have a lot more efficient meetings. So that is a big one that I did not mention.
So I think you kind of answered it, but some of the features that won you over to Boardable were what were some of the features that really what won you over to Boardable over the other choices?
User friendliness for sure. I think as you're looking, if folks are looking for a board management platform, you might find that a lot of them really do the same thing, but as far as the interface and the usability, it was just something that I think multiple board members were able to kind of get grasping on a little bit faster. And so I would say that was the number one thing. But also really all the features regarding setting up the agendas, that was definitely a winner. And to be able to take live minutes, that really changed the game for us as well, because we could record more easily different motions. We can assign tasks within our minutes and it integrates into the app. So if we have somebody that's like, I need to do X, Y, and Z, we can literally type it in as we're in our meeting, and it'll send them a notification and put it on their task list. And it's just,
oh wow,
it's incredible. So I love it a lot. I'm a huge Boardable fan. Like I love it to death. So I think it's been great.
It's interesting because we actually had one person emailed me and said, I registered for, she got the reminder for this session. And she said, I registered for this, but do we really need separate board software from our project management software? And I was like, that's what we're here to learn. I've never really heard about this, but everything you're describing, the functionality is super exciting. Before we dive a little more into that functionality and how it's changed your board culture, which I know it has, by the way, folks, because I actually did, Fertile Ground took a survey about GM transition readiness, which really looks at your governing abilities and what you're doing there. They took one before Boardable and shared the results with me. They then just took one like a month ago and shared the results with me. And it was just a huge transformation in how functional your board felt they were about meetings, being on time, having packets, reading the packets. It was just night and day. So I'm excited to dig into that. You did have questions from your peers in the chat saying, though, were the prices all kind of comparable? Was that a factor? What might that price range look like?
I will say that was a factor as well. It was a little more affordable, depending on what folks think affordable is. I want to say, and I should have definitely looked at the invoice before tonight. That I should have known this question would come up. Geez, I want to say the invoice was around, it was between I want to say around $1,500 and $2,000, I think, that ballpark.
Like a year or?
For a year, correct,
okay.
per year.
That's really nice.
And so this was actually, I mean, not too much lower, but there were a lot more expensive platforms. So this kind of put us slightly at the lower end. There was nothing kind of under $1,000 that I could find. But for all of the features, we thought that this was a good investment for us. And because of the commitment, we were able to get some discounts as well. And so that definitely brought it down a little bit. But I think some of the other platforms that I explored were, well in the like 3,000 heading towards 4,000 things. And we were just like, that's not sustainable for us right now. And so that hopefully answers that question about the price. And I don't know.
Dina, I think Dina asked about how many board members you have.
We have 11 board members.
So one of the larger boards we see with Startup Food Coast, most average 7 to 9. We have a few around 1 or 2 around 11 or 13. So, and so what are the areas of board management that have in Boardable that have really helped Fertile Ground improve and change its culture?
Yeah, I think streamlined communication. And so surprising, this has, I think, helped accommodate multiple communication preferences. So because of the app feature, we're able to somewhat accommodate those who prefer things mobily. And so they're able to check things in the app and benefit from the push notifications, but it also pretty much for anything we send out in the app, it will send an email as well. So we get to have that streamlined communication. And then for those who are more laptop based, they can just log into the app and do their thing there. So it really allowed us to consolidate, but also accommodate. And that didn't really rhyme, but to do a little bit of both.
So you guys are all now communicating. So is like all board email happens within Boardable, or does it interact with your Google email somehow, or?
So it's a combination. So we try to keep, so I think I mentioned we switched to our Google Workspace for our emails. And so everything, there's our board member, Ray, who did a wonderful job at setting up all the security features. And that's probably a whole nother live event to talk about that. But that really helped us to make sure that all of our email communications were within a secure way. And so we all made the commitment to adopt Fertile Ground emails and only send communications regarding Fertile Ground business from those emails. And those are the ones that are connected to our board management software. And so all of those things live within that combination of Boardable and Google Workspace together.
Okay. And so you said you set up agendas through it. Now, how does that work? Is there, because I think one of the things that challenges a lot of boards and startups, because there's so much going on, is having a somewhat at least input, like have an option for input, or at least somewhat collaborative agenda creating where people can suggest topics. And how does Boardable help you build agendas?
Yeah, so typically how we do it now is that our secretary will send out a announcement or a discussion post via Boardable requesting board members to submit any agenda items that they would like to see on the agenda. And then she then takes that to create our board agenda. And so we try to get that email out no later than 2 weeks ahead of the board meeting. So she has a full week to create the board packet and get everything together. And so she simply goes in and she just puts all those requests in and builds the agenda based off our previous meeting agendas and plugs it in based off of which committee requested things and plugging it into new business versus old business, et cetera. And so from what I hear from her and from what I've tested it out myself, I mean, it makes it so quick. I mean, I think it can be done in 30 minutes, if not less. So it's been extremely efficient.
And then the board packet is built, I think you said, I might have missed it, but I think you said something like it's actually linked into points in the agenda so people know which documents you'll be reviewing as well.
Yes, that's correct. And so it builds it out so that it starts with your agenda and you can attach the board packet to it as well. So if you click on the link, it'll drop you down to the particular document that we're referencing in the agenda. And so we're able to share that link in the meeting and people can kind of follow along as we go. And it just makes it so much easier than having to be like, who's got this document? Can you share your screen? Do this? It alleviates a lot of nightmares in regards to meeting facility. I'm sure somebody studied this before, but I can only imagine how much time people waste like trying to find documents or sharing their screen and figure out who has what, or did we put it in this folder or that folder? And I think I just saw a comment, oh yeah, attendance as well. And we can mark live within our minute meetings, our attendance, as well as any decisions, as I mentioned before, and lots of things like that. So it's been excellent. We're able to turn around those meeting minutes. She usually just does it as we go and is able to get them out the next day, if not that night sometimes, if she's feeling overachiever.
So is she taking notes directly into the agenda then?
Yeah, so it has a feature, you build out your agenda, and then from the agenda, you can take minutes from that agenda as well. And so I would need to show you all the platform for some of this to make sense. But as we send out the packet, there's an option for board members to take their own notes on a version that's only accessible in their version of the portal. But for people with certain access, so myself, our secretary, our board president, or whoever creates the actual meeting, you can go in and transfer over to minute taking, and you take it directly within the minutes. That way everybody can follow along directly where the particular agenda item is. And that's where she records any decisions, like I mentioned, or any votes or specific notes, and can go back and attach documents as well.
That is, wow. I think you're selling me on this for me to go talk to our board from Food Coalition.
Yeah, it's been really, really cool. And I don't know if I'm much of a nerd, I would say, but this has been really fun to experiment with. So
sometimes people, so someone private messaged me, so I guess you want to be anonymous, which is cool. You can do it in the chat. They said, so this all sounds great, but we have some older board members that just will not use technology. How did you get everybody on board with this?
Yeah, I mean, I really think I have to give credit to the board that they were just really willing to try things as well. And I think for those of our board members who were just less excited about technology, we invited the representatives. They were really great as far as the setup process in terms of inviting representatives to do training. So we did a lot of trainings with the Boardable facilitators, and then myself and the secretary also did some additional one-on-ones with people, or during the board meetings, excuse me, to walk people through any questions or concerns that they had, and to continue that training. It definitely, I would say, as far as implementation, I mean, it took a couple of months to really get everybody accommodated. And so we just did our best to make sure that we could spend some time with people and love on people and make sure they had the knowledge and tools that they needed. Because I think a lot of it just stems from, I think this is just my opinion too, but less of, or at least when I hear people say they're not willing, I think it comes from a place of fear, but also not wanting to feel like I don't know what I'm doing or what's going on. And I think just having those one-on-one sessions with people really affirms people and comforts them, and allows us to kind of work through those challenges and fears in a safe way that doesn't, have to be publicly in front of the entire board. And so I think that was really helpful for people, but also saying, just call me if you have any questions. So that's what I would
sounds like
offer.
you had to really take it on and have a team that was kind of piloting this, doing the work, and making sure the rest of the board felt supported. What kind of energy, like, who was it, you and someone else, or how many people were really having to put a lot of energy into this, and what was the commitment level like to get it running?
Yeah, I would say myself, our secretary, Ray, were a couple of folks that really had to think about, the logistics of things. As far as time, I don't know if I have a great number. I'm trying to think when we first started. I mean, I spent a couple hours a week just kind of researching and testing things. So I wouldn't say it was like a huge time commitment on my end, but then again, I just like doing these things, so I probably didn't keep track of it anyway. So, but yeah, so I think just implementing it, we tried to just do it slowly, and it worked well for everybody. And now I think I have a fellow board member on the
You do,
call.
yep.
I don't know if that's Mother Janet or not, but I would say I think most people feel that they like it now, even if they didn't at first. So I'm excited about that.
Janet, do you want to unmute and tell us your thoughts about the process? Because you
Think
sent
that
me
might
you sent me a direct note, so I thought you might want to share.
Well, yeah. Well, I just wanted to say that Simone is being modest because she did talk with us individually about what we'd like when she started this process. And I wanted to say she looked at four, but anyway, she actually gave us feedback on each of them and did this grid sort of thing that actually showed, you know, what this had, what that one had, and all of that. So she did quite a bit of work that way because, as she said, I think we range from almost 80 to maybe 30 on our board. And then, secondly, Peter, I'm sure I know because I was on some of the demo calls. Simone was able to negotiate discounts as a new account holder. So and that seems a little high compared to what we paid. But if you're interested, do negotiate a discount because they will give new account members discount.
Really good point.
And yeah, and I actually I like the reminders, and that was the important piece for me. Of course, the polling, the attendance, all of that which she's mentioned, but do request a discount.
definitely do that. Definitely do that.
So what's the polling? So Janet mentioned polling.
Yeah, so we also, as we kind of started implementing it, we were like, okay, we have some other cool features that we really could utilize better. And I think the polling came in handy when we were discussing our kind of board strategy and policy around voting outside of board meetings. And when we needed to make urgent decisions, how we wanted to best navigate that process. And so Boardable allowed us to do polls, and you can set the date and it gives reminders, and you can put attached documents to it and just a whole situation of things that's really great, and memos and stuff. And so we were able to utilize that feature to make some decisions, kind of not so much on the fly, but more rapid decisions in a way that allowed everybody to have access to the information, us to prioritize the security of everything, but make sure that it was living in a location that everybody knows this is where we need you to vote and focus, and to do it with ease, right? So you can just go in on your phone and press the button and vote and review the document. So it just made that process a lot easier than trying to go and email and like, is anybody available to meet at this time to talk about this emergency thing, or trying to keep track of people's votes via email, just taking out a lot of the chaos. So the polling is great. We use it for those decisions, but also small things like, hey, we want to schedule this meeting for this date. Are you available? That kind of thing. So it's been really helpful.
Nice. I really like that. It feels like it's very approachable, as you said, but like a place you go and put your board hat on, do your board things, and then take it off. And it's not like drowning your personal email.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. So I have to ask, and I'm putting you on the spot, Simone, so I apologize.
Okay.
But Janet mentioned a comparison chart of all the platforms that you can considered. Is that something you would be able to share with peers for them to look at?
Yes, if I can remember, yes, I will definitely try to locate that. And I would be happy to share once I find that. So definitely.
Awesome. I had to ask for you guys because I know one of you was about to ask. Peter asked, is there much in-app help or guidance for users just as they're going along using it?
Yeah, and so they have really great support. They typically get back to you within 24 hours. Unfortunately, there's not a phone support, but that's a lot of apps these days. You'll be hard pressed to find places that allow you to hop on the phone with somebody. But they are really great and really responsive. And if we have more detailed questions or need additional training, again, we have that account rep that will come in if we need them and can do training or answer any questions. But they have that ability to send a request via the app, both mobilely and on your laptop. And so I will brag about them all the time for their support. They're really great for that. So
excellent. And I think Janet is right that you downplay sometimes a little bit how much you do. It does sound like that it took some, I know not for you, I know you're a hard worker, but it took somebody saying, I will anchor this, I will do the research, I will watch the videos, I will set up the trainings. Does that feel fair that there was a decent amount of like, someone's going to have to take this ball and run hard with it for a couple months to really make sure it works? Does that seem fair?
Yes, that's definitely a fair assessment. And so, as I mentioned, I'm not going to be good at quantifying the numbers, but it did take some time to really go in and figure out, what does it have to offer based off the board's needs. How can I test this without having to involve the whole board and overwhelm them? And thinking about the costs and all those different things. So the startup process definitely does take some time in meeting with those representatives from the platforms to get some additional information. Because, people hate putting their pricing on the sites these days. Like, I don't know what the deal is with that. You have to do a demo and all this different stuff. And it's just, that part is a lot. I'm like, can you just put it on the website so I can move on and see if it's but they no. So I did have to schedule quite a few demos and conversations, but it was all very informative and helpful.
Excellent. Well, and we do have a question, Chelsea. Do you think Fertile Ground will keep using this after the store opens? Because I asked because it shows that it's for nonprofits. Now, I'm first going to say, remember that the Board of Food Co-ops function very much like nonprofit boards. That said, I'm going to hand it over to Samone. Do you guys think you'll keep using it?
So I think it's safe to speak for the board in this capacity. I think that we will continue to utilize it, especially as we're in that process now of transitioning or thinking about how we're going to be transitioning from a working board to a governing board. And I think this was a little bit futuristic of me and thinking forward and ahead to that process in which one day, I'm so excited for that day. We're not going to worry about so many different things. All we're going to have to worry about is governing and literally being a board. And so this allows us to have that process in place. So we don't have to worry about, our communication and meetings. We have all of that figured out. We can really focus on how we're going to manage that relationship with our general manager. And all of those other logistics are taken care of. And so I think this also sets us up well to have a system that we can invite our general manager into as far as communicating with us and being able to access historic documents and just really, I think, sets us up well as far as organization and exchange of communication. So really thinking about that governance transition. And I think this will allow us to continue being productive as we transition to that next step.
I was going to say, as a past GM myself, I'm like, oh my God, this is like, if my board was this organized and I could go in and I knew where all the board stuff was and what was going on, and if the agenda was out yet, I would be so happy. So I don't know if it's exactly a selling point to your future GM, but once they've been introduced to it, they will love you for this.
And that's the goal. That's the goal.
All right. Well, I did want to ask, so, what advice would you share with peers that are trying, that they're having the same struggles you were having? What advice do you give them on making this transition?
Yeah. I think, to really have a candid conversation with the rest of your board about the importance of this. I think sometimes things like this, just when it relates to organization or systems or apps or software, it can feel like something that can wait, right? Like, well, we can do that later. You can, but is the question. I do not think you should wait. I think it's something to definitely prioritize sooner rather than later. And I think my kind of thinking behind it too is just, as a working board, every minute matters. And so what does it look like as people who are, in a cooperative spirit, to value each other's time, and to give some of that back, as it relates to organization. So because I'm more prepared for the board meeting, we don't have to have long board meetings, and not that we ever really did, but I'm thinking about maybe other people who experience that, right? We're having extended long board meetings. People don't have a board packet to read, and we're having to, shuffle through documents and figure things out on the spot. And so what does it look like for us to love each other and be in collaboration in that way that gives us time back to be with our families, to do other things, or to spend additional time on some of the things that we need to get done for the cooperative, right? And so I think that is a big thing that I would think about as well. Or if you need a selling point for your board, just think about how much time you could save. You can do some of these things in a more expedited way, but also just, again, prioritizing that security and that efficiency around communication. And so it's so much work to be done. And I think having that conversation with your board about having a system that kind of takes some of that legwork and takes some of that burden off of the board, to be able to do those things and communicate better. And so I'm always happy and willing to support other cooperatives who are interested in kind of implementing something similar, because I can't recommend it enough as far as our organization and efficiency, which JQ mentioned. As far as our survey, it was a clear difference in how we kind of organize and relate to our board meetings and our governance procedures. So yeah, I would just have those conversations, develop a plan, and try to find a champion, and maybe find two. I think that's also helpful, right? A partner that can, assist you with kind of figuring out this journey. So I think those are my initial things, but yeah, really just, I think getting on the same page first about why this is important is a good first step.
I love what you had to say there and want to echo some of it, but first I have to let Janet speak because her hand is up.
Yes.
Well, Samone, everyone, has been quite modest because truthfully, even though she invited all of us to the demos and I attended most of them, once we got Boardable, we had used Slack among other things, but we had used Slack. I had these, I was very resistant. And I was resistant because I was so accustomed to being able to do a direct message via Slack. So if I just wanted to communicate to one member on the board, I could do that via Slack, right? Well, because Samone continued to have conversations with, I'm going to say, her support connect person, they eventually moved to the option, I'm going to say, or added the feature that we could do a direct message. Because initially, and correct me if I'm wrong, Samone, but I do remember I complained about this repeatedly, but and that I think speaks to the software developers that, Samone stayed on their case so much and I complained so much and all kinds of writing and everything that they actually added that feature. Do I kind of have that right, Samone?
Yes, and I would never say that anybody complained. I'm gonna let them tell it, but no, because I'm it's all good. It's all good. So yes, I think that's definitely a strong suit of the platform. They are always making new updates and very receptive to feedback from their users. And so anytime we have an idea, we just shoot them a message and they're like, okay, they'll give us some feedback, but they have rolled out a number of new features based on feedback that I'm sure we and other organizations have submitted. And so they've done that relatively quickly as well. So yes, I think you're spot on. And I will never put you on the spot for complaining. I think that is hilarious.
What I really hear in what you're describing, Samone, that I want to make sure is captured here is a really people-centered process. Like Janet saying, like, you know, Simone came to us and said, what features do you need it to have? What would it do ideally? What do you want? What do you need? Which any good software developer or person who's working to help you pick software would do, but Simone had that people-centered focus, right? And then it was not, oh, you know, we know that John's going to be resistant to this. It was more like, hey, everyone, here's opportunities to train. Call me if you have questions. Taking that discomfort, you know, if people are resistant to systems, there are reasons. People do things for reasons, right? We're not all just trying to be jerks to each other, you know. And so that Simone came from that assumption, which I really admire, because sometimes I'm just the one who's just like, John, instead of thinking, why is John resisting? What's making this difficult for him? And then my favorite part that I have to reflect back on one more time is, hopefully, even if you've been in sessions with me too often, you've heard me say, one of the most precious resources your co-op has, and we forget this again and again, is your board's time. Your time is the most precious resource to your co-op. It will make or break the co-op. You not burning out will make or break the co-op. And so, Simone, I just loved what you said, like, this is actually about respecting each other's time. And that people, we just don't see it when we're running and running and running, that a month or two of commitment to learning something, you know, could really honestly shave off, you know, half an hour a month on board meetings that could be put somewhere else. So I wanted to make sure people heard that and captured that this is really about respecting your co-op's most precious resource to invest in this and get out of the chaos that pulling together board meetings often is.
Yep.
And I want to open it up for questions, comments. I think people have been throwing things in the chat. Throw in the chat, raise your hand. I don't mean to dominate there, but I think you could bring in this software and not have the experience that Fertile Ground did if you missed those points of this real talent that Simone has as a leader to center people in the process to make sure everyone is successful and wins and gets what they need. So comments, questions?
And I think I got everything in the chat, so feel free to just shout it out if I did not.
I think you did. I caught somebody unmuting, so I was checking to see if they were asking a question, but they remuted.
They get a direct message. Okay, are your board members and officers paid, especially the secretary? So we are not paid. None of our board members are paid. So doing it for the love. Doing it for the love. Nope, not paid.
And
I think that differs by state, right?
Yeah.
I know in New York State where I am, co-op board members, the most we can do is vote for stipends. There can be no salary.
Right.
It's kind of like 501c3 boards. The board members cannot be paid, but if one of the board members has a skill that the board can benefit from, they can be paid as like an independent contractor. I kind of wish states would get over that with co-op boards, because it's very hard to attract certain core groups of the community to do that work, because they need to be compensated. To do the work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the vast majority of startup boards do not compensate. I know of one though that made the pivot to compensate for exactly the reason you're mentioning, Patrice, which was if they truly wanted to represent their community, then they had to recognize that some people did not have the time to donate and needed to be compensated to do that work. That was Common Share Food Co-op, which is in Massachusetts, but they're the only startup board I've ever heard of that compensates.
I wonder if, well, okay. Because you're already, how soon after you name yourself as a startup co-op, are you an official co-op?
It depends how long it takes them to incorporate, and then you have to appoint a board to incorporate. So some startups, you know, they have to do it almost immediately. Some it can even take a year or two before they incorporate. Depends.
That's what I was wondering though, because you can pay them before, if you're in a state that doesn't allow you to pay co-op board members. Before you do that incorporation, you could pay them.
very possibly. I'm gonna recenter us though, if anyone has any questions specifically about Fertile Ground's experience with this.
Sorry.
You're good. I just know you and I could keep all night. So if anyone has any specific questions for Samone and about her presentation and their experience.
I think I did see a chat. How do you currently manage your member owner list? So that is actually it's a good question too. So the funny thing is we actually went through a whole like system, platform, software. I don't even know what to call it. Just journey at the same time. So I was like, okay, we were originally using Nation Builder, which don't get me wrong, it's, it works for some people. I after kind of getting in there, I was like, I don't think this is going to meet our needs in the long run. It just was not, and I saw her face, it just was not working for us. Great platform. I think it just needs a little massaging in terms of updates and stuff like that, maybe. But it worked for what we needed to as we were kind of starting up. But I was like, as we're thinking about getting, this store open and going back to that whole conversation about valuing time and different things, I was like, we got to find something else. So while I was looking for Boardable, I was also looking for a CRM system as well. And so we actually transitioned to DonorDoc as kind of our customer relationship management system. And we implemented both of those at the same time. And so all of our member owner information is housed within DonorDoc now. And they actually, after doing some digging, they let me know that they also have some website capabilities. And so we actually contracted with them to build out our website. And so that allowed us to make things a lot more seamless in terms of our fundraising pages or people signing up to become a member. It allowed the website and that system to communicate directly. Like I said, I'm just really big on time. That's always going to be my number one thing. I'm like, I got a full-time job. I'm always saying that. Like, I got a full-time job. I got other stuff to do. I need everything to run as quickly and as efficiently as possible, just to make it easier. And so that addition of DonorDoc allowed us to just streamline so many things. And now, like one of the big things we were trying to figure out is, making sure people get their receipts, but also some sort of welcome letter when they join. And that allowed us to set all of that up. It's automated. They join on our website, they get everything they need. And it's just was great. And so that was a lot of big system changes. Oh, go ahead.
No, okay, yeah. Can you spell it?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat. DonorDoc.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to see, because like in relation to the Boardable and how all that works. And then of course, I'm reflecting on the class this morning and then thinking forward, how is all that going to dump into point of sale? But I know that's probably another 6-hour conversation, but but okay. All right, cool. Yeah, when I came on board, we were using Nation Builder as well. And I think you saw my facial reaction
I did.
As soon as you said Nation Builder, and we're currently with HubSpot. So I just, so with the Boardable, I wonder, which is probably a question for Boardable, just integration and all that, again, just to keep things as efficient and streamlined as possible.
Yeah, so not that I'm aware of any specific integrations with Boardable, because I don't know that there's much that would need to be integrated between the two. What was more important for us with DonorDoc was integration with whatever website we were using. And so that's definitely something I'll be thinking about in the next couple of months as well, as we get on a general manager and things of that nature. That point of sale transition, I was thinking about that as we did this process. And so from what I know, it should be able to integrate well with whatever that ends up being, fingers crossed. But I will be definitely thinking about that and double checking as we go. But yes, that's a really good point. So a separate system for that.
Excellent. All right. Any last comments or questions on our presentation tonight before we wrap up? All right. I just want to thank Simone so much. As she said, she works a full-time job. She's got a family. She's taking care of her co-op, and she spent her time with us. Just so grateful to her, and want to thank her again, and Janet for showing up and giving some support and adding some comments and thoughts to the session. Really appreciate it. We only have 2 sessions left. I hope you guys are going to find the time to join us. So tomorrow morning, tomorrow at noon, we have the case study from Rise Community Market. They opened a week ago in a little tiny town called Cairo, Illinois, that is 75% Black. And it was, they opened within, I think, a year and a half of organizing. It's much smaller than what most of you are going to open, but their story is really compelling and interesting about how it's different organizing in small rural communities. So hopefully you'll come out and support their story and join us. And then tomorrow night, I'm so excited. I have wanted a session on this for so long. Tamal Israel of Culminate is going to be joining us, talking about the history of Black cooperative markets in the United States that we are building on and building from today. So I hope you can join us for our last day and learn about some of those things with us as well. Real quick, a last thank you and shout out to our sponsors who have made this series possible. We are so grateful to them. Have a good night, everybody.